relation to that.
Okay. Is the ODM board rocking, as it has been somehow insinuated?
Again, as I've said, the party is intact.
Okay.
But work has to be done.
Chama iko imara.
Chama iko imara, but kazi lazima ifanyike. We need to get development for our people. We need to ensure that the Luo community are not balkanized in this country. We need to ensure that the Luo community are actually part of working with the government. And there is nothing wrong with that. You know, your problem, Bitok, you always think that the Luo community just are supposed to be opposing the government.
No, it's not my problem. I was just reading the
No, that is your problem. You want Luo community every time to be on the streets. When we sit down and engage like people who have gone to school, when we sit down and engage like civilized people, you get shocked. No, we don't have to be going to the streets all the time. This is a strategy, and we are willing to work with the president. There is nothing wrong, and you need not to read any political mischief in that regard.
All right. Hon.Wilson Sossion, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good to see you.
And good morning, my brother Mike.
Good morning, sir.
Yes.
And actually, Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year.
I don't think we've met this year.
Yeah, we've done so in style.
Okay, your microphone is just right ahead of you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're just looking at the newspapers, and some of the top stories this morning is about the visit yesterday by ODM elected leaders, and also some leaders from Nyanza who has been elected on either independent tickets or rather small parties. Now, is there anything to read politically? Brian Weke says we should not read anything politically. The people of Nyanza have a right to associate with government, and they also have a right to development. And they are not in their I mean, there's no job description that people of Nyanza should be on the streets all the time.
In association.
You've been a member of ODM also.
In association is also political. Because those are politicians meeting the political head of the country. And to me, that is right. The president has made it very clear that he will work with all elected leaders of the republic to deliver development to everyone. And it's exciting to see members of parliament from Nyanza engaging directly with the president. And but we saw a statement from communications director, we saw statements from others trying to bash. But remember, these are elected members of parliament who have been sworn in as leaders, and this prerogative of creating barriers that as elected members of parliament you must get permission from the party is wrong. It's undemocratic. There is freedom of association in this country. Even for me, I can take breakfast with Raila tomorrow, nothing, and nobody should read anything mischievous. And people are free to relate and to work, and the president, I think, has demonstrated that he's committed to be the president of everyone, and he has engaged leadership from all shades. We've seen governors. He has had meeting with governors from Azimio, and we've seen the code that he has struck in terms of working even with what was believed and perceived to be the opposition bedrock. We've seen what the president has done, and he has communicated and has developed very good chemistry with the leadership in those areas. And I saw yesterday a statement purported to be coming from James Orengo and bashing those members of parliament. But don't forget all the governors of Nyanza, Anyang Orengo and Gladys Wanga and the Migori governor. They were all in State House in Kisumu meeting the president when he toured Nyanza. So what is the difference? Nothing much has changed. And the president had a wonderful meeting in Homa Bay, a development meeting, and proper meeting with the leadership of Homa Bay, and rolled out a very clear development plan for Homa Bay in terms of housing, in terms of roads, in terms of even transport infrastructure in the lake, in Kisumu, in Siaya,
the university,
and is the president of the republic. So when members of parliament secure an appointment here in Nairobi to have a sitting with the president in State House, I think that is good. And the political chemistry of the people of Nyanza, if you looked at how the president communicated and was received in Nyanza, it tells you that even the Nyanza people are beginning to think liberally, politically. So let us not say that was just a development. It's also a political meeting, because you are meeting elected people. These are politicians, and they talk politics and development, and they did it. And one thing that Kenyans must appreciate is that you have a meticulously intelligent president whose worldview of politics is way above what we have seen, the brand of traditional politics of hate that we have seen in Africa. This is about transforming human lives. This is a president who understands what it means to work with urgency to transform lives of everyone, not a few, not your supporters. Once you are leading humanity, you serve the entire humanity. Okay. And we must look at our politics not only on the local context in Kenya, but we must look at the regional context even within the continent of Africa. We must change our brand of politics and move with the rest of the global community, who are moving very fast in terms of technological and industrial revolution. If you look at the charter, the plan of Kenya Kwanza, it focuses on activities that are unique to every county. And the president signed an economic charter for Homa Bay, an economic charter for Kisumu, an economic charter for Siaya, an economic charter for Migori, and is focused on delivering to every county of the country. So I think slowly by slowly, even the members of parliament on the other side of the divide, and they are seeing, they are being attracted by the framework and the format of the plan of Kenya Kwanza, because that is now the plan of the country.
But now the concerns that have also come out, Mheshimiwa, in regards to that, you can remember during the handshake and the camaraderie and the friendship that came up between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, the biggest critic of that union was President William Ruto, and he was saying that the president was killing opposition. How is it different now? Why is it that at that time it was not the opposition working with government? Now it's a different narrative that you can excuse the killing of opposition by saying that the opposition is working with government. Is that not a concern?
What was happening at that time is that was a strategy of Uhuru Kenyatta to stifle democracy and to use a handshake to destroy opponents within the Jubilee, and to use a handshake to also destroy perceived opponents within the NASA arrangement. The handshake marked the end of NASA. And you know, I was a loyal member of ODM within the NASA arrangement. But the ecosystem changed right after that. Those who are perceived not to agree with the president and within the arrangement of NASA were destroyed. Those who are perceived not to agree with the president within Jubilee were also targeted. And that was wrong politics. You know, you cannot ambush the country one morning with a political miracle that you have not socialized everyone, that you have not negotiated without a framework. Virtually, the handshake was a personal agreement between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. And that handshake was not in the interest of Raila Odinga. It was designed to be the interest of Uhuru Kenyatta. And that is why when NASA collapsed, where is Mudavadi? Mudavadi stepped down.
Brian Weke.
Stepped out. We also lost, we almost lost the teachers' union in that arrangement. Remember, prior to 2017, we signed an agreement to be committed and to support the NASA arrangement, particularly when it spoke to the agenda of education, what we needed to do. So that was a more personalized arrangement that did not serve the interests of the country. And with time, you've seen the rearrangement. You know, this is a country of free people who can realign themselves and change their political arrangements and come up with what is good for the people. Who knew that a political party called United Democratic Alliance was going to be born? Nobody was imagining. But out of this handshake, Jubilee will collapse, and there will be a strong political party called United Democratic Alliance that even had the majority of members of parliament at some point. Who knew that it would happen that way? Who knew that NASA would collapse and you'd see the exit of the bigwigs of the original owners? And then out of that arrangement, because of this phobia that we control the power, now we have the instruments of the state, and you can trample on anyone. Even those supporters who have stood by you, you can ignore and destroy them. Who knew that an arrangement called Kenya Kwanza formation will fall? Who knew? Who knew that William Ruto will come together with Musalia Mudavadi and with Moses Wetangula and even Alfred Mutua with his party and Amason Kingi and the rest, and Kenya Kwanza provided a ray of hope of liberation from this imperial arrangement from the handshake. In fact, the handshake was an imperial arrangement that was designed to settle Kenyans after 2022 elections.
Let's get
but that is thing. And I think the people of Luo Nyanza are seeing that Kenyan people are thinking differently. They are becoming liberal in their minds. Anybody can be a president in this country. Let us speak to issues and speak to issues that transform the citizenship. And that is why when you look at the blueprint of Kenya Kwanza, it speaks about bottom-up, focusing on the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and the development agenda will be delivered.
Weke, what are your thoughts? Why the change now? Back then it was killing opposition, but now we don't have a problem with killing it. We're like, fine, we are not killing opposition, we are working for the people.
Bitok, I like listening to Sossion. You've asked him one question, is gone around all raft of different issues. But I must say this. Number one, I have a lot of respect for Sossion. I think he would make a very, very good cabinet minister for education. I hope the Kenya Kwanza team rethinks that strategy. But again, I must also say that he's even more competent to speak about ODM than me, because he's served
I'm a senior member
as a fairly ranking officer and served in parliament because of ODM. Now, I want to be very clear about this. There is nothing wrong strategically for any member of parliament to sit down with the head of state. Actually, the constitution provides for that framework where elected leaders can sit with the head of state and discuss issues that are affecting their constituency and really discuss issues that are affecting Kenyans. And I've looked at the statements that have been made by Anyang' Nyong'o and James Orengo, and I think they're very dishonest, very, very dishonest statements.
Why do you say that?
Because just the other day, I don't know who sanctioned them to meet the president. The photos are all over. At State Lodge Kisumu.
And
is it that the problem is the venue, the Nairobi State House or the Kisumu State House? Because it is very clear that Anyang' Nyong'o met the president and they had, if you could see, it was a very cordial discussion.
There was chemistry.
Very serious chemistry. I actually thought at some point that Anyang' Nyong'o was going to be the William Ruto's deputy. I saw James Orengo host the president in Siaya when the cabinet secretary for ICT had a Thanksgiving ceremony. So it is extremely dishonest and double speak in this country. When you meet a leader, it is not a problem. Are they telling us they had to write to the party for the party to accept for them to meet the head of state?
Maybe they did.
No, you know, that era is long gone. Okay. The era of political brinkmanship, the era of political conmanship, the era of brokerage is long gone. Once you have been elected a member of parliament, your sole role is the people that you represent. Now, if a member of parliament has met the president, that should not be news. Actually, the news should be that that member of parliament is effectively representing their people. And you know, this issue that every time when you meet the president, every time when you meet the head of state, that it is about your stomach. You know, that politics is long gone. I want to salute those members of parliament from Nyanza who met the head of state. That was a bold step, and I want to urge them to continue in that direction so that the Luo community in this country also can access resources.
But then again, gentlemen, so what happens to opposition? Because at the end of the day, we need an opposition that checks the government. What happens to opposition? What responsibility is it left to?
You see, William Ruto has stated it very clearly that opposition killed itself through the handshake, which is true. There should have been definition of limitations of protecting and codifying the opposition to play its role. But when you subsume it within government and you fail to play the role of the opposition and you bid for the government everywhere, then you lose it. And the opposition was created at the ballot. And the people, yes, the ballot created an opposition. And that opposition must remain in place until the next ballot. And for any civilized democracy, of course, our political system is presidential. You can only have minority and majority in parliament. But I think with our strongly rooted, is it called Westminster Constitution of British system, where the parliamentary system is so strong, there has been, and the president committed at the Chatham Hall in England when he gave his speech, that we need to strengthen the opposition. And here in Kenya, the opposition must be brought back. And the runner-up in any presidential election, because if we go with this type of arrangement, where the runner-up, number 2, ends up nowhere after elections, that is not progress in our politics. It is time we wake up. And as Kenya, we have been very innovative in many things, in development and in education and in all other things. And in terms of our democracy, is actually one of the best in Africa.
So you're proposing to bring time.
The president has written to Parliament that be considered if it means minimum amendment to the Constitution and be done in Parliament, so that the number 2 in any presidential election
ends up somewhere,
automatically assumes the office of the official opposition in Parliament. And it is funded, it is financed, And that opposition leader should even be able to establish a shadow cabinet so that the government is checked. It is not for the glory of an individual. It's not for the glory of an individual, but it's good for the country, because we must have strong checks and balances. And this is out of the tragedy. You see, in 2013, when Jubilee was formed, there was a lot of optimism that we would have a vibrant government that would deliver. But eventually, we saw the emperor and imperialism emerging. And actually, we lost a lot in terms of democracy between 2013 and 2022 in terms of governance.
All right.
And we've lost the civil societies, we've lost institutions like unions and the rest. And so we had a government that did not entertain any form of checks and balances. And the final straw that destroyed the checks on government was a handshake.
Right.
And that's why now, more than ever before, and this one government should, Kenyan should be open about it.
Right.
And the political parties should be open about it. What is wrong? What is wrong with fast tracking, with urgency, the proper establishment of the office of the official opposition in parliament? Because we still have the IBC results. We know who was number 2, and we know the arrangement within that number 2, and we have many institutions. We have Senate, we have National Assembly, so that then, instead of going to Kamugunji
from an office
for rallies and Chagaranda and the rest, you can speak from the floor of the house in a more civilized and orderly way. And that is the best way of engaging.
Okay.
But opposition to government is not enmity. It is not.
Okay.
People can sit,
it's a leadership.
People can engage, people can take tea, but
especially
maintain the independence of checking government through the opposition. And we've heard it before in this country. We heard the official opposition. But I think when we were negotiating the Constitution of Kenya 2010, people did not see the value of having it beyond the new Constitution. That was abolished, and we opted for a presidential system of government, and we didn't open our eyes widely to look at the threats of checks and balances in the future. It is time. Kenya in its form of democracy deserves that office. And I don't think the Kenya Kwanza government is intent in muscling the opposition. We need a responsible opposition that can be funded by the exchequer, and that which can do its work.
Right. Brian Weke, take us straight to taxes. Now, the biggest conversation this week has been, for the last 2 weeks, has been the issues of tax. And the government has said, kila mtu alipo ushuru. But there are people who have somehow interpreted that to mean, some level of getting back to the days and revenging on those, on the ancient brothers, and what they demean and the misdemeanors. What are your thoughts on the issues of tax and the conversation around it?
Just before I come to the issue of tax, I just want to make it very clear that as per our constitution, there is no official opposition.
Okay.
That was there in the old constitution. It is not there. This constitution, actually, what we provided for was a presidential system with clear checks and balances. When I even hear members of parliament from Kenya Kwanza saying that they're in government, then they do not understand our democracy. The work of parliament is actually to check the executive. And they were elected to ensure that they check the executive. So, and that is the reason why this current constitution, members of parliament are not members of government. You remember the old constitution, you had to be elected first as a member of parliament, then you are appointed as a minister, or what you now refer to as a cabinet secretary. In the current constitution, we were very categorical that a member of the executive, if you have been appointed a minister or a cabinet secretary, then you cannot serve as a member of parliament. And that's why you've seen Alice Wahome had to resign. You've seen the Minister for Roads, what's his name? Murkomen had to resign. Duale, they had to resign as members of parliament. That basically indicates that if you look at our constitution, it creates for a very clear checks and balance. That is why you cannot serve in cabinet and at the same time serve in parliament. So in the strictest sense, we definitely do not have an official leader of opposition. So what Raila is doing is basically just being a good Kenyan and trying to check the government. So I want to agree with Honorable Sossion that as a country, we need to rethink and see whether we can bring in back the issue of the leader of opposition. On the issue of taxes that you have asked, I want to advise Sossion, your people, let them leave Uhuru Kenyatta alone. That narrative of Uhuru Kenyatta was a good narrative. It sold during the campaign period and it was bought. He was vilified. He was the big brother then. So that narrative is done. Now they're in government. Let them focus on raising funds as per what they would call the plan. And William Ruto has been very clear that in terms of taxes, they want to increase the tax base. Basically, what that means in very simple English is that increase the number of people who are paying taxes and reduce the cost of paying taxes. I have seen people referring to the president as Zakayo, because basically, if you look at the plan that he has and what he's implementing are two different things. Instead of increasing the base and reducing the money, he is literally increasing the money to the current taxpayers. We agree that everybody should and ought to pay tax. Okay. And if there is anyone who has not paid tax, let the government deal with them. And including these leaders, you know, a simple mathematic, Bitok, when you're on record saying you're worth 4 billion, the flip side of it is that 30% of that money ought to be in the exchequer. It means your income and what you have been able to amass is around 4 billion. It means you paid around 1.something billion. So even as you look for Uhuru Kenyatta or the members of family of Uhuru Kenyatta or any other person, there is need for us internally to do a proper audit of all leaders. Let Raila Odinga pay tax. William Ruto is also worth a lot of money. He ought to tell us how much is he worth, how much has he paid in terms of taxes before telling us about Uhuru Kenyatta. And I can tell you without fear of contradiction, because I'm not afraid of anyone. All these leaders who are serving in government, if you look at their net worth vis-a-vis what they've paid to the exchequer, it is peanuts. So if we are coming up with a policy to pay tax, it cannot be a Uhuru Kenyatta issue. It cannot be a Uhuru Kenyatta family issue. We need to pay tax fairly and squarely, regardless of who you are in this country. Whether you're Bitok, whether you're Brian Weke, we need to have a policy that ensures that everyone pays tax fairly. Increase the number of people who are paying tax, reduce on the taxes.
Kila mtu alipe ushuru.
Kila mtu alipe ushuru.
Yeah. So you mean we should have more people paying taxes, not loading more taxes?
No. We cannot afford to load the people who are paying taxes. Ideally, we ought to make them reduce the taxes and increase the number
spread
of people who ought to be paying taxes and they are not. Or they are evading tax.
All right. Is that not what is happening now, Sossion, with this?
Now, ideally speaking, if we look at the history of our economy and tax collection or revenue measures, the ordinary Wanjiku has been shouldering the burden of paying taxes. So the people at the bottom of the pyramid are victims of heavy taxation in this country. And they need a relief. And I'm happy we are having this conversation of tax, it's an indicator of how advanced we are as a democracy. Okay. We are not discussing about tribes. We are discussing about tax, which affects everyone. You all know in the American election, the most dominant item of discussion is the taxation. And the rich will always try avoiding being taxed. But the empirical data that we have in Kenya is that there's been historical tax evasion by the big boys in quotes. Okay. The big boys who are connected to the powers that be at all times. And when you're talking about the big boys here, the government that exited,
the previous regime,
which was led by Uhuru Kenyatta. And when you talk about that, we're not talking about the family of Uhuru Kenyatta. No,
it was not Uhuru Kenyatta alone.
Uhuru Kenyatta was the president. Yes. And facts, data has been indicated by AU and the UN that the amount of tax evasion by the big boys who are evading taxes is close to 1 trillion shillings. If we were to evenly and effectively collect taxes, we will not need to bring a finance bill to Parliament to review the fuel levy and load it on consumers, which will have a trickle-down effect even up to the prices of basic commodities. The ordinary mwananchi will be relieved. And I think the step that has been taken by this government is to round up everybody. And that rounding up everybody has scared the big boys who are doing business and evading taxes. And I think that is a strong and bold administrative measure by the president. And the president has not said he's not going to pay tax. The president is leading in paying taxes. So, kila mtu alipe ushuru. And in very strong economies where services, you get education properly financed, you get healthcare properly financed. Paying taxes is not a choice. In fact, in some countries, you evade taxes, it is a criminal offense that you can even be sentenced to death if you engage in such. It's a worst criminal action, and anybody evading taxes is an enemy of the state. That one is an enemy of the state. And I think the position that has been taken by the president, which these guys who have been on tax holidays, the big boys who have been on tax holidays, and they're trying to drive a narrative that does not have legs, which cannot stand anywhere in this country. In the long run, if we are able to raise taxes, because Kibaki, when he took over the tax collection and revenue was at 250 billion. And by the time he retired, because of very effective revenue collection measures, the revenue collection was at 1 trillion. Now it is at 2.1 trillion per year. And we've allowed the big boys again to enjoy. And all indicators are that if taxes are collected effectively, without even increasing at the moment, collect taxes at the same level where it is by KRA, we will be able to hit at least 3-point-something trillion shillings. Remember, the loan repayment per year in terms of tax is at 1.4 trillion. So if we are able to collect more revenue, we will be able to finance our domestic budget more effectively. We must get our economy right, and we must get back. And it is not supposed to be done tomorrow. It must be done today. And this is not an item of political negotiation. There is a chief executive of the country. He must ensure that institutions are doing things right, and Kenyans are paying taxes, and none should be exempt, even the former families. There are tax obligations they must pay. Yes.
Okay.
Because they're not exempt. This is not a monarchy. This is not a monarchy. This is a democracy. And when you are elected as a president, it doesn't mean you should begin enjoying tax holidays. Or your friends who are doing business with you should begin enjoying tax holidays and be exempt. Everyone must be subject to taxes. We are now talking about financing education. How are you going to finance education if you don't have tax? We are not going to borrow from the World Bank to finance education. And let me remind everyone that when Kibaki really streamlined tax collection measures, our budget was financed from domestic collection at 95%. So that's a mark of freedom. The mark of freedom is our ability to collect taxes
and self-finance.
And after collecting taxes, let those taxes be spent prudently. Our taxes should not again be wasted through activities of corruption and mismanagement.
Let me ask you, Brian. Hon.Wilson Sossion has spoken about the big boys. The big boys in Kenya, as it is a reality, are not many. There are very few. It's a small clique. Now, in this country, we have an unemployment rate of millions, close to 15 million, 16 million. People are not productive in the economy. Do you think the problem is the big boys who apparently are not paying taxes, or it is the masses that are not productive in the economy?
I think first when I listen to Honorable Sossion, he speaks very well of Kibaki, and he forgets where his people are, the Kenya Kwanza government. Sossion, let me remind you, when Kibaki took over power, and you've rightfully put it, the economy was in shambles. We were, leave alone this ICU these people are talking about, we were in ICU. We were only able to collect only 200 billion. As against a very big budget. Kibaki did not mention Moi at any given time. He knew he had work. He knew that the economy was in shambles. What did he do? He sat down with professionals, he sat down with different institutions and devised a method to resuscitate this economy. Now these Kenya Kwanza guys, they are very obsessed with Uhuru Kenyatta. Every time when they wake up, Uhuru Kenyatta. Taxes, Uhuru Kenyatta. The country we found it, Uhuru Kenyatta. You know, let us be serious as a country. You remember when Kibaki took over, the things he did for this country. And we want to remind these Kenya Kwanza guys, forget about Uhuru Kenyatta. You are now in charge. You are in government. Can you focus on moving this country forward? And that is the reason why the people who are like me, Brian Weke, I'm always very critical of this government. I want to offer them support so that we can move this country forward. Do you know at some point, when Orengo was a minister for lands, Kibaki asked Orengo, during those days, after we had removed the Moi in this country, asked where Uhuru stays next to this studio of yours. Does he have a title deed? Orengo said no. And he said, can you organize for Moi to be given a title to that property where he lives? And Orengo directly delivered that title in person as a minister. So, Bitok, we need not to politicize tax collection. We need not to politicize tax revenue. We need not to politicize the process of collection of tax. Our beloved president is in power. Let them devise a method to ensure we increase the number of people who are paying taxes and reduce the tax burden on the common man. Bitok. The other thing that is killing this country, which when you hear the Kenya Kwanza stalwarts, they have this thing called bottom up. You know that it's a very loose narrative that they use to win election, yet nothing is happening. Nothing is literally happening. The people they say a boda guy will buy a matatu is yet to happen. Mama Mboga will open a supermarket is yet to happen. A guy who has a taxi will buy a train is yet to happen. Then they keep on telling us, you know, this time around we have bottom up, we will focus on these people. The people who you saw is government. You never saw any Mama Mboga in that government. So let us not play with the Kenyans' emotions. Let us not play with the Kenyans' aspirations. We know that narrative worked very well. You guys have won elections. Can we focus on those people? Now, Bitok, the biggest problem in this country, which I have never had the president talking about, which I have never had any Kenya Kwanza guy talking about is the issue of corruption. Corruption and wastage is bleeding this country. The former president is on record that we lose nearly 2 billion in one day. If you calculate that times 1 month, with my quick mathematics, is 60 billion. If you times that per year, is 712 billion. If you times that times 5, we are looking at around nearly 3.5 trillion. Why don't we focus on rooting corruption in our country? The president is very quiet. He's busy telling people that, it is God who brought us here. Even us, we were not ready, but abracadabra, we prayed, we were in. Let us focus on the interest of the people of this country. And when I finalize, because I'm nearly leaving, as I told you, I want this government, the deputy still president, it's like they don't know they're in power.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Because when William Ruto won the election, the likes of Akina Raila Odinga were very quiet. What happened? You saw them running around the country every Saturday, every Sunday. They are going to thank people, holding political rallies. They are the ones who have literally started the political mood in this country. We had accepted once the president was announced by IEBC, and subsequently the courts upheld that decision. We were quiet. They are the ones who are now starting to increase the temperature of politics in our country. And I want to urge leaders, we are not doing very well economically. The cost of living in this country is so high. We need to sit down, both opposition and government, and sit down, cool down political temperatures, and see how we help common Kenyans to get jobs, common Kenyans to be part of production in our country, common Kenyans to be able to earn, common Kenyans so that they can pay taxes based on what they have received. Thank you very much, Bitok.
All right. I'll borrow your 7 minutes.
Okay.
Sossion, what is the pathway to productivity? Because when you're talking about taxes, what is the pathway to ensuring that every Kenyan is productive?
The question is, why are you collecting taxes? Why are you collecting taxes? And you've asked a question. Why do you have millions of citizens? Is it that they are not productive, that we are not collecting enough taxes? Human population is always an economic opportunity. And it is also a disaster in itself. Disaster, if you don't handle them well and put them into good use and run a working economy. Getting back from what Kibaki did was trying to fix the country. And what we needed to do was to grow the traditions and the frameworks of Kibakinomics. And now where we are, the Jubilee government measured in what we call capital-intensive economy. If you engage in capital-intensive economy and you destroy production sector, Kibaki supported the production sector of the economy. It was made to work. And let me tell you what we are doing as Kenya Kwanza. We have taken the economy to the theater for surgery, to resuscitate it, to have the image and the framework and the genetic coding of what Kibaki had put in place. Because what works is always right. What does not work is wrong. And it is not going to be an overnight business. I don't think anybody talked of Mama Mboga's opening supermarkets the next day. No, those are exaggerated things. We need an even economy, an economy where there is equality, where Mama Mboga can walk to a supermarket and buy sugar
Is it
as the wife of a president.
Is it happening?
should happen.
Okay.
It should happen. It cannot happen today. It may not happen in 2 years. It may not necessarily even happen in 3 years. The road towards economic equality must begin somewhere. And that is why you must speak about the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And we will continue speaking, and we are not apologetic about that.
Speak or act.
Speaking or acting.
We will be speaking and acting.
Because how to get a plan?
Yeah, speaking and acting. Speaking and acting, those are two things. And it's a process. These things don't happen overnight. And we've got to make the economy work for everyone. Work for everybody. Favorable for everybody. And even favorable for investors. And the framework of Kenya Kwanza is to trigger, and it has been said, and it is being implemented, to trigger the production sector of the economy. If we talk now, the subsidies that were taken by Uhuru Kenyatta administration, and we'll talk about Uhuru Kenyatta, he is here in Kenya. he did not retire from politics actively like Moi retired from Kanu and went home. Uhuru Kenyatta is still the chair of Azimio and actively sponsoring the current rallies. He's here. So we'll talk about him. and for us, we talk when it is necessary.
But Kenyans want to understand.
And we'll talk when it is necessary.
Okay, away from Uhuru Kenyatta.
When you get back, agriculture had collapsed. The tea industry has been taken over back by cartels, coffee industry and milk industry. That is being addressed. And if once that is addressed, and the tea farmers will do well, the coffee farmers, the milk farmers, and generally agriculture. You know, already even the subsidized fertilizers across the country, and they will remain so. And those prices will have to be brought down. And this is what governments do all over the world. If you have a government that does not protect farmers, then expect that the economy to collapse. But if you are shouting that bring direct taxes to subsidize for food, and you are not supporting production, then those are wrong economics. And this is going to take time, despite the strong drought that we have. It's a drought that we've never seen in years. But we want to believe the only way, and we are not even believing, it is what science has proved. You must promote agriculture and protect farmers and give them proper incentives in terms of inputs, in terms of fertilizers, in terms of quality seeds. That one, we can't produce food without quality seeds. In terms of adopting the most modern farming, yes, GMO is part of farming, is part of genetic engineering. This breeding, plant breeding is genetic work. GMOs, we have consumed GMOs. The fruits, Brother Weke, that you buy from the supermarket, those are GMOs.
The seedless grapes.
So don't be cheated. The GMOs will be here. GMOs is the only way of producing food for human population in terms of huge quantities. That one we can't run away from science. And I'm speaking as a scientist and an agronomist for that matter, and an expert in that field. And so I know for sure, if already there are activities of subsidizing fertilizers, and we hope as we move into the seasons of harvesting, the food production will go up, and therefore the prices, the prices of food will also stabilize, and cartels will be removed, and we'll see things working. The housing scheme that is being rolled out all over the country is going to provide incentives for labor, and also in the course of time, with time, the aspect of housing in terms of human settlement will give a great sense of decency to the people of Kenya. By the year 2063, because we are also working within the African agenda of 2063, Kenya will be a different economy. So some of these things, you see, we don't tell Kenyans that after elections, once somebody is elected, everything will change overnight. No, it's a process. And the president has said, give 1 year, you'll be able to fix quite quite a number of things.
Okay.
And let me tell you, even turning around agriculture is not one agricultural season. We may need 2-3 seasons to turn around.
To have sufficient
Yeah,
product.
that's a fact.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not done overnight. To mechanize, to invest in irrigation, to fill in the deficit of the food shortage, it needs to be done. And I can tell you by 2027, and this one will be done with military precision. It's not something that is going to be negotiated. It's not going to be negotiated. And we are doing it having come from a background of political mistreatment and economic subjugation by the regime that left. So this thing, it has to be done, and we must turn around things. That is why you see politicians who are in the other political shade, who are in the opposition, are seeing things. They are seeing indicators of things changing. And so in summary, if you want to turn and utilize the human population, invest in the production sector, and everyone will be useful. So the economics of Kenya Kwanza is balancing between capital development, injection of resources to capital development projects like the expressway, and balancing with the production sector.
Okay.
There is no economy anywhere in the world that does not, that will grow, and that will benefit its population if you don't promote the production sector.
Okay.
So the production sector is the topmost priority. And in that way, with time, because we create jobs, of course, when you focus on manufacturing and value addition, like our tea, we cannot crush our tea and sell it at low prices, almost raw, and then others will add value and sell it out there. It is time to we put value addition to even our own goods. Africa is very rich, not only Kenya. Africa is very rich. It has all the resources, but it is very poor. Why? Because we allow others
to value add,
to lift our resources, take our resources, export them, and add value out there and make a lot of money. And that Kenya must begin leading the continent of Africa in turning it around, both in terms of controlling the production sector of the economy and adding value to its own products, and we control our own market. And eventually, we will have an economy of guaranteed equality. That must be, we must bridge the gap. And that is what happens even in the global north. And there is politics of the global north. It's about bridging the gap. This will have to be done. And if that is not delivered, there is an opportunity in 2027 for Kenyans to vote.
Okay.
And we will be voting on the basis of indicators.
He's my senior, so I have to let him finish speaking before I respond. Now, key things, and I agree with Mheshimiwa when he says that they will continue speaking about the people who are bottom, and I want to agree, they only speak about them, but literally executing policies that bring them up, that is a totally different story. They continue talking about them, speak about them, because really nothing is happening to show that around they are working with those people. Safari, they're just speaking about them. Continue speaking about them. Now, in relation to agriculture, do you know, Bitok, our biggest problem?
What is that?
In agriculture.
For me, I think it's the cost of production.
Correct. Very simply. The cost of production of sugar, the cost of production of maize, the cost of production of our agricultural products in our country is around 4 times more expensive compared to Sudan. Do you know Sudan? Sudan
is it farming? I don't think it's farming.
You'll be very shocked that bringing in sugar from Sudan is nearly half the price from what we produce locally in our country. Sudan, I don't even want to tell you Brazil, forget about those Venezuela, those economies that are quite vast in terms of production. The cost of production is extremely expensive. Now Mheshimiwa Sossion comes and tells us that we have done very well. We've given these guys subsidies in terms of fertilizer. Then
which lowers than the cost of production.
Allow me. That is just one aspect.
Okay.
One of the most expensive aspects of production is the cost of fuel. Farmers need tractors. Now the cost of fuel, as you can see, once the subsidy was removed, it is quite expensive. When you're rearing chicken, name it, you need power. The cost of fuel literally increases the cost of power. Electricity. When you're going to pick whatever you're going to pick, you need transport, which is extremely expensive. When you finish your product, for you to take it to a different level, you need transport. The cost of fuel is extremely expensive. So which cost of production are you lowering? The mere fact you give us fertilizer, that is just one aspect of production. We need to look at the entire chain of supply in terms of agriculture. And if Mheshimiwa says he's an expert in that, he understands that it is not about just planting. It's about a process. It's about a chain that ensures that this product is sold at a certain level in the market. The cost of millers milling that maize, it needs power, it needs fuel, it needs transport. So if we do not get it right in terms of cost of production, we are doing zero work. This tokenism and the PR stance that we have given people fertilizer, to me really is hogwash. Yeah, let us, if for sure, you know, they had already forgotten that where they come from in Rift Valley, the livelihoods of their people is heavily dependent on agriculture. They were quickly bringing in maize.
Okay.
Do you remember? The minister was on record and there was some maize that were on the way.
Stabilize the prices.
And the maize has been brought.
It has been brought.
It has been done what?
It has been brought.
The maize has been brought. It's coming. I think it's coming this week.
The maize, farmers in Rift Valley brought hell. The maize never arrived. Now is when they are trying to bring in maize. So again, we have to really think about our cost of production. We are still very high in the region. Just the other day, I see now we want to, what is it that we want to import from Tanzania? We are importing things from Uganda. And yet we are the superpower in this region. So we need to stop about PR stance. We need to stop talking about tokenism and get back to real work.
Right.
The cost of production of food in our country, as I finish because I have to run somewhere, needs to be reduced tremendously. And there is really need for us to sit down and think about the entire chain of production. That will help our people and it will help our farmers so that we are competitive not just internally but within the region and Africa as a region and the world.
Okay. Finally, matters education.
Before education, it's talked about the cost of production and it's good. We tie the loose ends on that item. I think Kenyans appreciate and farmers appreciate, and we've seen farmers queuing for fertilizers. The primary input and factor of agricultural production is fertilizers. And reducing the cost from 7,000 shillings to 3,500 is the biggest relief. That is the first step. And this is an empirical truth from day one of the assumption of office of the president. That has been implemented. And we've seen farmers collecting fertilizers. That is not fiction. It is happening and it is for real.
I don't think he has denied it. He just said he has been.
Yes, that's a fact. And I think Weke should accept that rather than saying, because that is one great factor of production. The other aspect that needs to be looked into, like the fuel. Who took the price of fuel up? What cost? The price of fuel, the the price of electricity, cartels. It's cartels. And the energy sector in this country has slipped into the hands of cartels. And if we try to diagnose, you will know the who is who in that sector. And this is one sector that has to be dealt with in terms of cartels, the state capture we've talked about. And I think, Brian, we don't need to close our eyes if cartels have taken over the energy sector, the fuel, the electricity, and raised the prices. And we know what they are doing at the moment. This is one area that needs to be addressed so that the price of fuel and the cost of energy can be brought down substantially. Not just for the farmers, even for investors. Because if we need an investor-friendly destination, that is what I believe, and that is what Kenya Kwanza believes. With time, the prices of fuel must be brought down. It must stabilize. It must stabilize, and even the cost of electricity, it must be brought down.
Because of time,
no choice.
Because of time,
once that is done, it is going to help the farmers further to reduce the cost of production. And we must discuss about it. And we want all of us to discuss about it. And why are you talking and you're not pointing at these cartels? Because it's the cartels who are taking over the energy sector and transferring the huge cost to the citizen. And that needs to be done. If we want freedom, let it be truly free from all angles. And also speak about it. Why are you not talking about cartels? And the cartels are real. They exist. Why do you want to protect them?
Well, the government to deal with the cartels. The government to deal with the cartels. Right now, finally. Okay. Because of time, we need to weigh in very quickly on education. Students were transitioning this week, and also children are going back to school this week. Parents as well have complained about the cost of education in terms of school fees. There's been direction from government in terms of uniforms, but it looks like the schools are not buying that story. Well, somebody hot air. So the kids have gone to school, they're transitioning as well. There seems to be a limbo in between. So 1 minute on education as we close. 1 minute. I'll start with you, Weke.
As I've said, and I will say it before, I am sitting with who would have been the best minister for education. I think, if you ask me, the current minister of education that we have has no clue, is clueless, because he has been making one blunder after the other. He makes an announcement today, tomorrow he retracts it. So again, Mheshimiwa William Ruto ought to rethink the people he has put in certain positions. And one of them is actually this Minister of Education. Those policies you're seeing the minister giving that uniforms should not be sold in schools. I want to confirm to you, without fear of contradiction, that still schools are selling those uniforms. Many of them, parents have called me. It is still happening. So again, we need to have proper policy followed with a proper implementation structure or process. In terms of CBC, there's a team that has been appointed. I don't know whether Sossion, you're part of that team. We wait for their recommendations. I think as parents, we want to be lazy. You do not want to be part of the process of your child. And I think, if you ask me personally, CBC has given that responsibility which parents do not like, so that they are part and parcel of their children's learning. You know, these days, fathers mostly, when you hear them in those social gatherings, once they have paid the fee, they feel they've achieved. I mean, nishalipa school fee. No, you have to be part and parcel of character building of your child. So that I would support CBC. When you hear parents complaining that ni kazi ngumu sana, because they don't want to be involved. So again, we will wait for recommendations. I know Sossion has been against CBC. I don't know why. I don't know. He's one of those wazes who don't want to be involved in their child's life. So again, let's wait for
model for rich families. But majority, 90% of the households here are poor.
Another 40 busy.
They're looking for food. They have no time to look at school work. And this business of giving children homework to take home. Learning should be restricted in school. No, it's not necessary.
Is it called homework?
That is unnecessary.
It is called homework because you're supposed to do it at home with the people at home.
But now let me correct certain things. We have a cabinet secretary in charge of education, Ezekiel Machogo.
I didn't say this.
And a very and I would say here, because education is about leadership. If we have wrong leadership, then we get it wrong. And right from the time of Professor George Saitoti, and we asked Kibaki to give us a responsible minister who could steer the sector. We were given Saitoti, and the TSC, we were given Ongwai, a gifted former governor Kisii, as the CEO. And that is why we set the right trajectory of education. And when Professor Ongeri took over, the systems were in place, he was able to sustain. And when Mutula took over, the systems were in place and he was able to sustain.
Dr. Mutula?
And yes, Mutula Kilonzo, that's a good minister. I worked with him, I engaged him. I engaged all these people on behalf of teachers. But when Jubilee came in and we were given the first and arrogant minister who was rudderless, called Professor Kaimeni, and then we were given a dictator who destroyed children, called Matiang'i, and the collapse of universities can be traced to Fred Matiang'i. And I can say without any iota of doubt, yes, removal of examination cheating was agreed, but destroying children and denying them grades is not what examination is meant for. And Magoha came to exacerbate the same things. The only minister in Uhuru administration in education who was reasonable was Amina Mohammed. But the cartels could not allow her to last even a day. Now the first minister of Kenya Kwanza is a grounded administrator who is reasonable. What people don't know is that in terms of working and decision making and management of affairs of the ministry, Ezekiel Machogo is so grounded and is so effective. I've consulted him and I know what I'm talking about. So contrary to what people are talking about here, even when you tell me I should have been the minister, no. I've read enough time.
So you feel he's running it well? He's running the ministry well?
Yes, he's running the ministry very well. Extremely well, contrary to the little politics that people are bringing. Now the Presidential Working Party is looking at many things. It's now there is this transition, the first product of the Presidential Working Party. And I dare say what the Presidential Working Party is doing is clearing the mess of the carryover of Uhuru administration to this one. Because the first thing is to sanitize. So it's a cleaning room. It is a cleaning room. Now the first step, the first product of the Presidential Working Party is where to domicile grade 7 within the CBC. That is the first thing. And that has been domiciled in the current primary schools so that parents can be saved from cost and government can be saved from cost. But despite that, the issue of uniform, it was brought very wrongly. This is where I don't agree. The uniform for grade 7 should have been the same as the others, so that you don't bring in unnecessary additional cost, because that is almost attracting 5,000 shillings per household. That is a fact. 7,000 for education. Let us not lie. Let us speak about the truth of what is happening. And I will not lie to Kenya Kwanza government. I'll always speak what is right and what is wrong, because that is what he committed in the charter. Number 2, you make grade 7 learners have extra meals. That's a new cost loaded on parents, about 3,000 or more per term. Those are mistakes within this arrangement. But domiciling is the most important step. But these other challenges can be dealt with. The only elephant that has not been handled after the missile in grade 7 is the curriculum. And I think most should know. Learners are not sitting in class, they're sitting within a curriculum. If you look at the curriculum model of grade 7, there's 12 compulsory subjects, 12, and 2 optional. 46. And what is the teacher requirement? You will need about a teacher for 2 subjects. And for 20,000 schools, times 9, that is around 180 new teachers. So what I dare say, and I think, and I've told the committee, I've told the CS, I've said it, my statements are not secret, it is public knowledge. My position is known, and it is born out of detailed quality research that I've directed in the past, that this curriculum model, other than domiciling in grade 7, it must be toned down. Some of the subjects have to be expanded. What we call the integrated science must be revisited. Integrated science is general science, which Kenya left. That was the poorest mode of science in our education system. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I hope the Presidential Working Party, once it gives its final report and recommendation, the major activities will be remodeling this curriculum. And my view is, get out of CBC as early as we can as a country. And we must not necessarily go back to 844. Let us model an education system that can spur the growth of our economy. And for me, I am persuaded to believe that STEM education is the way to go. That is where Korea went. That is where Japan went. China. That is where Singapore went. That is where Malaysia went. Let us have an education system that can help Kenya develop industrially and technologically. This cut and paste curriculum from fraudsters from the West, the rich individuals and the World Bank is wrong. Let us have our model that can allow our children to be innovative and to be industrialists and to be competitive economically.
Right.
And this is
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you. Time is on our side. Thank you so much for coming in. Asante sana Weke.
Shukran.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Sossion for coming in.
And I'm glad you've already told Sossion that thank you very much, Waziri.
It's been a pleasure having you, gentlemen, for the tacklers who have been with us. Stephen Sorobit, is it by coincidence that Kisii Secondary School and past percent of students scored the university required grades and equally the serious education resides from this region? I'm trying hard to not to imagine what you all know, okay? Doro, dictator who destroyed children. Matiang'i, you are lost in ideologies, Mr. Sossion. All right, Steve Katumuri Kitumo Kandara, well tuned in. Keep course guy. This guy there doesn't understand the problem farmers go through. The least you can subsidize, fuel is 20 shillings. That's why Kenya Kwanza want to bring down the cost of fertilizer from 7,000 to 3,500. And the farmer can save 7,000 per acre in production by only subsidizing fertilizer price. Okay. Doro, the cartels Sossion is talking are in government now. Yeah. Okay. The Sossion is better placed in the education sector. I want to hear from him. His take on CBC. Okay. Karian Juguna, President Kibaki was able to do all that because he didn't inherit loans, and so whatever tax collected was used for the things, unlike now that revenue collected is to be divided among us loans, pending bills, etc. And I stand to be corrected. Juguna, thanks for affirming that Hon.Wilson Sossion is an education champion and is best suited for the sector. I have a question for Hon.Wilson Sossion about a program that has been running since 2015 and has really helped public primary schools in Nairobi called Experimento. Thank you. I have experienced it firsthand as a parent. What is Experimento? Maybe you can just tie it up with a question on exam cheating. Did it happen?
Well, I have no knowledge. I don't want to lie about that model called Experimento. I don't know, because there are many programs that are being brought by external bodies and mounted through the Ministry of Education. So I would not comment about that one. And examinations cheating, the problem we have in Kenya is that examinations are good when students fail. That is the general thinking. And I don't think it is right. And when I said Matiang'i destroyed children, I mean it, and there are figures. In what we call measurement and evaluation is a practice. After students are examined and they have raw marks, the raw marks must be graded, moderated and graded. That's a practice. It must be done. And what is the purpose of exams? The purpose of exam is to evaluate learners, that is one, evaluate the curriculum two, but more importantly, to facilitate transition. So if you fail students, then what you are saying, there will be no transition. Because I remember and I raised a lot of concern. I investigated as the Secretary General NAT the activities of Kenya National Exams Council at that time. It never even moderated the raw marks. One uniform grading system was applied on all the subjects. And within a very short time, results were released. And at that time, 88,000 students qualified to join university at grade C+, down from 265,000. Can you imagine? 265,000 qualifiers in 2015 to university, drops to 88,000 in 2016. And then people are telling us we want A's to be real A's. You don't fail people and then shout around and silence everyone that you have done very well. That was wrong, fundamentally wrong. And I think I did conduct a quick survey and I did it with experts in measurement and evaluation. And I'm persuaded to very strongly that Fred Matiang'i and Magoha did not utilize the services of measurement and evaluation experts, and they decided to disrespect the international norm and practice of moderating exams. And Amina Mohammed tried to remedy the whole thing, but she was hounded out by cartels. So that if you look at that was 2016, 88,000. In 2017, sababu ya kiburi and refusing to listen and refusing to discuss, the same was done, and C+ and above dropped to 71,000. And there are 140,000 vacancies available in the universities. Now, who is filling the rest of the balance of 70? Are we saying out of the 600,000 students, we cannot raise 40,000 who can fill these vacancies in the universities? We are talking about 100% transition from primary to secondary. We must have 100% transition from Form 4 to tertiary institutions. That is TVET, mid-level colleges and universities. And when Kibaki allowed free education, it was all children in school. And Kibaki went ahead and financed affordable secondary education. Kibaki went ahead in law and said every county must have a university. Because the vision was, let as many citizens as possible proceed and transition to higher education. And transition to universities, if you look at the US, for example, is at 65%. And Kenya was about, when Kibaki left, was about moving close to 15%. But when Matiang'i came with this arrogance, which was praised by many Kenyans, and I dare say it, I'll keep saying it, the transition to universities dropped to 9%. Why do we glorify people who kill our own children? And if you look at the examinations this year, if you look at examinations this year, the number of A's are at 1,000. But you see, at that time, the A's were 3,000. And when you look at what you call the normal curve, because when you moderate, you get the normal curve. In a population of 800,000 learners, we should be having about 5% tending towards A. And then we should be having 5% tending towards E. But you can see the E's in these exams were 30,000. And by 2015, the E's were about 5,000. So you can see the astronomical increase in the number of E's. What do you want students with E's to do in this country? And then the A's were around 3,000, and now it is at 1,000. When it was 1,000 this year, everybody shouting in this country that there was cheating. Surely, what do we celebrate failure of students? And I think we need to handle national exams more professional, which Machagua is committed. And I said very clearly, we should have 30 to 40% students with C+ and above. And to me, it is not 30 to 40%. It should be 60%. Our students, in terms of capability and even learning outcomes, are the best in Africa. The grade C in Kenya, if it is taken to Botswana, will definitely be grade A. Why do we want to kill our students? Well, even this examination cheating is because we make examination a matter of life and death. You deny learners the opportunity. If students get A's, let them get A's. If there are 10,000, then give them A's, the 10,000 of them, and let them transit. And I think this is the human face that must be given to the examinations. It must be fair and just to the learners. So this year, the number has risen to 173,000. And this is a beginning step for Kenya Kwanza. And to me, I'm telling Machogu, don't fear. I'm telling Kenya National Exams Council, don't fear. Moderate the exams and let us have more students getting A's, and let's have more students getting the requisite grades. And maybe it is time, even universities set entrance exams when admitting students to various courses, rather than using these exams at this level as a way of punishing students. When a new government comes in, it has a different policy. When another one comes in, it has a different policy. We must have a standard professional way of mounting exams and managing exams. Stamp out cheating and grade children appropriately and fairly. To me, the number of A's in these exams with 800,000 learners, if I look at 5%, then I think the A's that we should have is between 5,000 to 10,000. That is not a problem.
5,000 to 10,000.
5,000 to 10,000. And the A's should be around the same number. And then majority should lie there in between. Then the rest of the placement in the different courses, the mandate shall lie with the government and admitting institutions. To me, 100% transition to secondary should be reciprocated with 100% transition to higher learning. Because tell me, when you fail in this candidature of last year, there are 800,000 students. But students with D- and below is 500,000. Meaning, you restrict them from accessing any meaningful training beyond Form 4. What do you want this huge population to be? What will they be? Do you want them to be criminal gangs, condemned? Why do you run an education system that condemns learners? We must run an education system that supports learners to be useful citizens. So we have got a wrong way of grading and moderating exams in this country. I dare say it. I've said it, and I've had people trying to talk about, why is Sossion condemning Matiang'i? I've seen articles, people are speaking. Professor Kiambo of University of Nairobi has indicted Matiang'i. I've seen experts indicting Matiang'i. He is answerable for causing what we call academic genocide of our own children while presiding over the ministry, and the president at that time allowed genocide on our children. And that is why the government of President William Ruto must allow children to be children and to enjoy their rights. And even this year, I've not seen any cancellation of exams of any candidate. Cancellation is the worst way of doing it. If indeed even there's examinations cheating, there are other ways of penalizing rather than cancelling. And we must mount exams in a manner that there is no cheating and there is no stealing. So I still urge the president and the CS not to fear, but to ensure that examinations are given a human face, there is no stealing, there is proper grading and proper moderation. What Matiang'i did killed universities, because Matiang'i was waging a personal war with Professor Mbete at the University of Nairobi. He wanted to end Module 2, the fee-paying students, to frustrate Professor Mbete. And I think that is the worst way of behaving in public service. You cannot wage personal wars on individuals, and you kill lives and kill institutions.
Right.
Now universities cannot finance themselves because they no longer have students to admit, students who can pay fee. And it is good news to universities now that with 173,000, maybe government can sponsor the usual number, and the additional can be admitted through alternative channels, and they can pay. And universities will be up and running. So essentially, Matiang'i kill children and kill universities. And we are wondering, why is Egerton closing down? Why is no university closing down? Why are the other campuses of the various universities closing down? Bad policy and bad leadership. What I pray for at the moment in Kenya Kwanza is that there must be sound leadership, and even decisions being taken should be guided by research. And it is time, and I tell Kenyans, it is time we protect our children. And it is not time to condemn our children during exams. Why are we complaining when the number of A's increased? But I'm telling Nick,
the moderate
and use moderate and use the international instruments of measurement and evaluation. And if 20,000 students merit to get A's, so be it. Give them A's. Don't deny them. It is what they've been looking for anyway. That's why they've been reading and working. Let them get.
Let them get the A's. If their students have A's, so Shana Masamba, wapewe. That's what they've been looking for. Anyway, well, it's been a pleasure having you. This has been the Tackle, the 8th of February edition. This is our first show this year. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you on this first day. Please keep sharing, keep sharing this conversation. I hope to see you again tomorrow on the Diaspora edition, and also as we warm up for Friday on Sheria Wiki. It's a pleasure to having you. If you have any other question, you can still send it. If you have anything that you're not satisfied in this discussion, you can send it to us so that we can look at it in our next conversation. It's always a pleasure to have you, Hon.Wilson Sossion, especially on issues to do with education and administration thereof. And it's always a pleasure as well to have every tackler who joins us this morning. Let's make sure that tomorrow we show up better. That's on your screen. If you can see us, then definitely your next client can see you. If you can see us, then clearly your next client can see. So you can advertise with us, call the number on the screen, or send up us a message, then we'll get back to you. Until tomorrow on Diaspora edition, this has been the Tackle, the 8th of February edition, and it ends now. Bye-bye, and see you tomorrow.